this tutorial we're going to be building a reviews application where we get to flip through profiles of different individuals. So we'll be having our next button where we can navigate to the next profile, and we will also have a previous button to go back, and we will have a random select button where we can randomly select profiles. Okay, it's just going to be a very simple application. So I have my reviews project folder here, which I pulled into my VS Code. We'll be using VS Code for this tutorial. So I'm going to be setting my VS Code side by side with my browser. So I have an index file here which is empty, so I'm just going to set up a boilerplate using MS abbreviation. So I want to give my title here, okay, a reviews app, okay, and I'll want to be linking my font awesome icon folder and my style sheet in the head side. So I'll have a link here, and I'll be linking my fonts, the CSS, and I want to point to this file here, all.main.css. okay, good. That's where I'll be pulling out my font awesome icons from, and I also want to link my style sheet. So styles CSS. So we'll be using live server with in this tutorial. Alright, I have my index file running right now. It's live server. So in my body tag I want to let's not forget we need to link our app.js file here. So I'm going to using the script tags. I have my source to be app.js. Alright, good. So in my body tag I want to have a main tag. In my main tag I want to have a section tag. It's a class of container, okay, and in my section I want to begin with giving a title, so I'm going to have a comment here called title. So I'll have a div here with a class of title. And in my div I want to create our h2 tag, and I'll have okay, our review is good. Alright, still in our title tag I want to have a div with a class of underline. That's the effect right here, and remember all of these classes are coming from our style.css file, and I should still point out that this tutorial is geared towards the logic, so we're much more interested in getting the logic all set up in our app.js file. So I just want to quickly create our user's interface in our index file here. Our CSS has already been set up. I'll have them in the link in the description below. So having said that, I want to begin creating our reviews article. So I'll have a comment here, say reviews, and here I want to begin with an article tag that has a class of review. Okay, in this article tag I want to begin with a div and that has a class of image container, that's img referencing that image here, and I also want to have an ID of person dash img. So this ID is also being referenced in our style sheet here, but we'll be pointing at this ID from our JavaScript file to manipulate the picture here. So we want to add code name on the profile here, so I'm going to come out from this div here, and I'll have a h4 with an ID of author. Okay, I just want to have this side by side here. Okay, an ID of author, so I'm going to just add code the name right now, say Sarah Jones. And right here I want to have a p tag with an ID of job title. So I'll have UI UX designer. Okay, I also want to have a p tag with an ID of info, as a summary of the profile, and then embedded there. So I'm going to just paste in a few text here. Okay, that looks good. So out of my p tag, I want to create a button. So leave a comment here, create a preview and next buttons. So I want to create a div here with a class of button containers, button dash container. Okay, and in this I want to create my very first button, which will be the previous button rather. So I'll have a first button with a class of previous pre-btn. Okay, and in this I want to embed my photo awesome icon with class of fas, and this will also have another class of fa-chevron circle. Then this will be pointing to the left. Okay, that's the button right there. So we'll be copying this. I want to copy this and paste it one more time and do a brief editing for the next button. So I'll give this a class of next-btn and also change the direction to the right. Okay, that looks good. And lastly, we want to have our random button. So coming out of the div, I'll have a comment here also, say random button. So I'm going to have a button tag here with a class of random btn, and here I just want to add code, some text, say random select. Okay, that's the button we have right here. Now UI is all set up. We want to work with the logic right now to manipulate the DOM. And in my JavaScript file, my app.js, I have a reviews array of objects. Now this is an array of objects. I have 4 objects here. So we are setting up data locally. We are not going to be getting data from a remote server or something. So we just want to keep this simple. So that's why we're setting up data locally. So this data is what I'll be needing to manipulate the DOM. So firstly, I'd like to select all of my elements here that is attributed to manipulating the DOM. So whenever I want to change this picture, the name, the job description, and the text here, I would be doing that for my JavaScript file here. So I'll need access to all of those entries on the DOM here. So how do we do that? We need to select, pull in our classes and our IDs in our JavaScript file. So here I'm going to give a comment of say select items. So the very first item I want to select is the picture file here. So I'm going to create a variable called img to equal to, remember our image tag here has an ID of person image, so we're going to be pointing at that. The document dot get element by ID. What element are we getting? We're getting the person dash img. Okay, so I'm going to be copying this. I'll copy this and paste a couple of times because it's actually the same thing we're about doing. Okay, so I want to access the name part now, so I'll be using an ID of, or rather a variable of auto. Since it's an ID also, this will be auto. So access the text content right here. And also for the job, to give a variable name of job, and the class name is also job, or rather the ID is also job. And for the last variable, I would like to call this info, and the ID there is also called info. My index page. Now we want to get access to the buttons. So for the very first button here, which is the previous button, I'll declare a variable called btn equal to document dot our button have classes, so we're going to be accessing them using their class names. For the very first button, which is the previous button, I have a class of pre-btn. So I'm selecting that using query selector. So we have a class of pre-btn. So I'll be copying this a couple of times also. Pasting. So for the next button, I'll give it a variable name of next btn, and it has a class of next-btn also, next-btn. And for our last button, which is a random button, I'll give it a class name of random btn, and it has a class name of random btn. Alright, we have all of our items selected. Now I would want to load up, whenever the browser is loaded, I want one of the objects in the arrays to be displayed, every information of the first object in the array to be displayed in the DOM. So what do I need to do right now? First of all, I'd like to initialize a variable. I'll call this variable current item. Okay. Now I want to be specific right here. I want to access the very first object here to be displayed whenever the content is loaded, whenever our browser is loaded. I want this very first object here to be loaded. Now we remember that our arrays are 0 based index, meaning the index of this very first array is 0, while the second object in the array is 1. The third object has an index of 2, and this last object has an index of 3. So having that in mind, we know that when I'm accessing an object, it's definitely going to be the first object. But when I have a value of 1 here, I'm actually accessing the second object in the arrays, in the reviews arrays. Okay, so for us to be able to load the first element in the array, once the browser is loaded up successfully, we'll add an event listener to the window object. So that will be window dot add event listener. Now what event are we trying to listen to? We're listening to the DOM content loaded, and this takes in a callback function. And right now I would like to just console log what I want to happen and see what we have in the console. So I'll say document loaded successfully. Let's see if this event fires off in the DOM. Okay, everything looks good. Okay, we'll check out console here. Alright, document loaded successfully. So our function is working and our event is firing up properly. So I don't just want to console log anything. I want the very first item in the arrays, in the review array, to be displayed. The very first item has the name of Susan Smith. So let's keep watch of that and see what we can do here. And now I want to access an item in an array. I have to call up the array itself. So this is review. Then with the angled bracket, I need to put the index of whatever item I'm going to call. Now I want to access the very first item, which has an index of 0. That's the reason I declared this variable earlier. So I'm going to call this variable into this angled bracket, so that will be current item. So for me to be able to manipulate the picture here, what I need to do is to tag along this my image variable here. So I'm going to say img dot the image has a property called src on it. So I'm going to be giving it a value of the reviews current item dot. Now I'm trying to access this image here. I'd like to also chip in that we are hosting this, all of the images we get here from Cloud Ordinary, we are hosting it there. So I'd like to get this very first image here. So I'm going to tag along this img property right now. So that will be the img property. Okay, and if you notice, our image just changed. Alright. Alright, to make our code look cleaner, I'll put this first expression right here into a variable. So I like to say I like to declare a variable up here, say constant. I call the variable item to be equal to this. So I just need to change this to item, and we're still getting the same thing. Okay. Alright. So I also want to manipulate the name here, the hard-coded name here. So I'm going to remember we have a variable of author here, so we'll be able to manipulate its text contents pointing at this. So I'm going to have author dot text content to be equal to we're trying to get the property name here. So remember, we already assigned our reviews current item to item. So I have item dot name. So if you notice, our name changes to Susan Smith, which is the very first object here with the name of Susan Smith. So we are accessing this right now. Okay, that looks good. Also, we want to be able to manipulate the job description. So remember, we declared a job variable here also. So job text content to be equal to item dot. We also have a property of job in the arrays, in the review arrays. So I'm going to be tagging along job also. So if you notice in the DOM, we'll be able to access the job title of Susan Smith. So we also want to access the text right here. So with this info dot text content to equal to item dot. Now our reviews array also have the property of text. So this is what we're trying to access here. So I'm going to tag along text. If you notice, our text here has changed also. So that looks good. Right, good. So whenever the page loads, we are accessing the very first object in the reviews array. So right now, let's work on the button. Here, I would like to give a comment, say page load this event fires off. Okay. And now for previous and next buttons. We have variable declared for our previous and next buttons. So I'm going to we need to add event listeners to all of these buttons, but we'll be adding event listeners. We'll be adding event listeners individually to all of the buttons. Okay, so for the very first button, which will be the previous btn, so we're adding an event listener. What event are we listening to in this case? We are going to be listening to the click event, and this takes in a callback function also. Now what do I want to do? Whenever I click this button, I want this selection of profiles to be flipped backwards. So the best thing to do is for me to be able to reduce the value here. So how do I implement that? That will be current item minus. Now we can't just flip through that way, because remember, our value here right now is 0. So if I go back behind 0, what do we have? What value do we have? We have -1, and our array doesn't have any value of -1, so we'll be getting errors in the console when we get to a value lesser than 0, because all of the values is going to be negative. So how do we refactor that and make our code work without getting errors in the console? The best thing is to work with the conditional statements. So I'll be using if statements in this case. Now if our current item is less than 0, what do we want to do? We want current item to get a value of our reviewed dot length. Now I'm trying to access the very last item in our reviews array, because whenever our value gets below 0, I want our current item to be equated to this very last object here. And remember, this last object has an index of 3. If the very first object has an index of 0, the last object will have an index of 3. So having that in mind, how do I access the value of 3 to be assigned to current item? And remember, views.length will give us a value of 4. A value of 4, not 3. So how do we get back down to 3? We need to subtract 1 from 4, right? So since our reviews.length will give us 4, it means we're going to subtract 1 from our reviews.length. I hope that makes sense. So in this case, this will be reviews.length minus 1. So this will not produce an error in the console, because right now we are accessing the value of 3. Whenever current item is less than 0, let current item be assigned the value of 3. So how do we get 3? The reviews.length, which is 4 minus 1, will give us 3. Okay. Outside of our if block, we just want to copy all of this and paste here. Okay. Now if we scroll back, we are going back, as you can see. Alright, that looks good. So also we want to, I'll just copy this and paste here. Now the only thing I want to change is our next button. We are adding an events listener. I'm listening to the click events right now. Current item needs to be increased. Current item plus minus is 10. Okay. Now, if remember we have 4 items in our reviews array. Now, if current item is greater than our very last item has an index of what? An index of 3. So if current item is greater than 3, we want to assign the value of 0 to current item. So when current item gets to a value greater than 3, which is 4, that value should be assigned 0 to current item. I hope that makes sense. And let's see if this works also. So we are not getting, our button is actually working right now, and that looks good. Okay. So lastly, I want to work on our random button. Alright, right now we are trying to select random profiles from our reviews.array, and remember we need to access our button right now, our random button right now. So we'll be adding our event listener to it. So for our random button, we want to add an event listener. We're also going to be listening to the click events, and this also takes in a callback function. Now we want to, how do we access random numbers in JavaScript in an array? So I'm going to we need to call in our maths.flow, and this will take in maths.random. We'll be multiplying this to our reviews dot length. Okay, so we're going to we need to assign this to our current item. So this will be So we are assigning a random number to our current item, and we will copy this and also put this here. Okay, so I think that should do it. Okay. So what we are doing right here is to assign a random number from our reviews array to our current item. So whenever we click the random button, whatever random number that has been generated here will be assigned to the current item, and we can access that from right here and manipulate our DOM. So let's check if that works. So we are actually accessing random numbers, and our profile is being selected randomly. Okay, that looks good. Alright, I would like to do one more thing before we call it wrap. If you notice, our code looks like we've been repeating the same thing over and over again, the same statement, the same lines of code over and over again. So we need to refactor this to make the code look cleaner. So it's better I grab all of this and put in its own function. So I'm going to call declare functions here, show profile. So I'm going to put this okay. So right now if I change this to show profile, call this here, we should be accessing the same thing. Okay, so also I'll change this to show profile, and I'll also change this to show profile, and I'll change this to show profile. Okay, let's check that out. Alright, our buttons are working as perfectly as it should be. Our random buttons are working. Okay, that's it for today's tutorial. I hope it was fun and exciting, and thanks. I just want to say thank you for staying through to the end, and I really appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next tutorial. Thank you very much.